this recording. Please enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. I am Samore, your host, and the fellas are here for another episode of SJH Mancave. We are live on Facebook and looking forward to another fantastic conversation. You can follow our Facebook page at SJH Mancave and our Facebook group at SJH Podcast Family to get notified when we are going live and engage in discussions we have throughout the week. You can also see our videos on YouTube at SJH Mancave. And with all that being said, let's dive right in. And this time I'll kick it off and talk a little bit about how my week has been. So, of course, developments continue to occur due to the events of the riot at the Capitol. And I think the thing that has struck me the most is that you have a lot of people, a lot of white people especially, who have been forced to empathize and put themselves into situations that they've never had to put themselves in before. So, for example, there were multiple reports over the last few days that there are Republicans who felt like everything Donald Trump was doing was wrong, felt like he was directly responsible for what happened at the Capitol. However, they still would not vote to impeach him because they've been experiencing death threats because this MAGA group that they've been cultivating and depending on and making excuses for for however long, they finally started to turn against them, and all that aggression and rage that used to be directed towards other groups or the cultures or the races, now it's being turned towards them, and they have no idea what to do or how to handle it, and it's turned them into absolute cowards. Whereas the Congress people who are involved in this situation now, who are not white, like AOC, Ayanna Presley, Ilhan Omar, all these people have been getting death threats for years from this very same group of folks. And there was no support from the Republican side. None of them ever raised their hand and said, you know what, enough is enough. We need to calm down the rhetoric. No, they were perfectly happy with taking advantage of this whole situation. And now they don't know what to do. And it's fascinating to me as well because I feel like you can take that same situation and just apply it to regular folks and it works the same way. Just today, for a former coworker sent me a Facebook message warning me, saying, "Hey, I've been hearing at my job a lot of reports about white supremacist groups deciding that this weekend they're going to start targeting black families." Where they're going to commit violence against them or try to kidnap them as a way of doing, a gang initiation or a group initiation, and it's going to be especially heated this weekend. And the whole time I'm reading this, for her, it's very passionate, and she's like, "Wow, this is horrible. This is new. This is an escalation. Everybody needs to be really careful." For me, I look at it like this is stuff that I think about all the time. Like I'm used to having to make my adjustments. I'm used to expecting the possibility of someone thinking about or trying to commit violence towards me every time I walk out the door. Like it just is what it is, and you learn to deal with it. And you learn how to deal with those situations when it comes up. So when I read it, I was like, nothing I don't know. But for her, it was like, oh my God, I can't imagine living this way. And I think it's just fascinating to watch as people are being forced to look at the country and look at the people around us in a completely different way than they ever have before. And I think that's only going to continue over, the next few weeks as this situation hopefully wraps up. If it even wraps up at the inauguration, because maybe this is just what the next 4 years are going to be like, or maybe it's just what the country is going to be like. Anyway, that's what's been on my mind for the past week. Any thoughts, brothers?
I can't help but to speak on that. It's, at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's those. you've had your chance to ostracize or get those people out of your party. Because what I hear a lot is that they don't necessarily represent the Republican Party, but you sure take advantage of their voting power, don't you? And they don't vote for you for nothing, right? They get something out of it. So, you had your chance to isolate them out. You've had your chance to stand up and say racism, sexism, classism, all this is not going to be a part of my party. This is not a part of my campaign. You had your chance to do that. And you could have got some Democratic support because there are some Democrats who wouldn't mind voting Republican if you could just get your mess cleaned up. But you want those votes and you keep those votes, so you just chill, you just let it happen, right? So I have no sympathy for any of them, of course, as I'm sure you two don't either. But it's like you wanted their
Absolutely not.
votes, and you stoked these fires for years, long before Trump, and you thought you could keep it under control. You thought it would only go so far, and you found out what was true 50 years ago, 100 years ago, which is, hey, and as long as you stayed out of their way, you were fine. But if you got in the middle of it,
Mhm.
if you tried to stop it, they were going to treat sympathizers just as bad as they were going to treat us. And you're finding that out. You're starting to find that out the hard way. So,
It's amazing to see.
you need to, if you want to save the Republican Party, you need to get them out of there. You need to get them out of there. You need to isolate them, and you need to let it be known that that's not going to be a part of your party anymore. If not, your party is on its way out. It really is what it looks like.
Mhm.
But it ain't going to be out without a fight. I can guarantee that, because they're not going to back down anytime soon on this, and it doesn't look like you're going to kick them out of the party. So we're just going to have to do away with the whole conservative attitude here. Is what we're going to have to do, and that's going to be a tough fight to do, but it's got to be done.
You know, Joe Biden caught a lot of flack when he said at the podium that we need the Republican Party. We need a strong, vibrant Republican Party. But I actually agree with him. I feel like, competition breeds excellence. I do not believe that the country would benefit from only having one political party that everybody basically has to turn to in order to get things done. I feel like we work much better when there are two, you know, competent, real parties with real perspectives that are both fighting for America, but just in their own ways, and then trying to come up with the best solutions. We haven't had that in this country for a long, long time, and it I agree. It'll be interesting to see if the Republican Party can recover from this. It seems like McConnell is letting the media know that he's done, that he is basically ready to cut off Trump. And the question will be, once he cuts off Trump, does that mean he starts cutting off some of these MAGA people as well? Because there are some MAGA senators, they aren't all Congress people. So, is this going to be an internal war with the Republican Party, or are they going to cut off Trump and then be like, all right, y'all should just be okay with everybody else? Because that ain't going to work. It's not going to work at all. So, we'll see how it continues and how it develops, brothers. But that's definitely what's been on my mind this past week. All right. And with that, let's go ahead and get into our main topic. And feel like we've talked about politics and Donald Trump and the news so much over these past few months. It's time to refocus again and get back to the things that we actually wanted to do when we first started this podcast, talking about fatherhood, relationships, family, and the things that are important to us in our day to day lives. So, the question for today is, do you have the expectation that your partner will remain the same as when you met them? And we mean this both physically, mentally, and spiritually. But we'll start with physically. Do you have a responsibility to the best of your ability keep the same body as what you had when you first got with your partner? And Hudson, I'll start with you.
Um, Man, that is so tough because, but it's not tough in the sense of not the body, I would say, but I think you've got a responsibility, especially if you had children, to your partner to try to remain healthy. I think you have that responsibility. One of the jokes me and my wife has all the time is, "You're not about to leave me here with these kids," you know, and I
Absolutely.
and I think that's a very fair expectation to have, is that you're gonna try to to do somewhat eating right, and try to do at least a bare amount of exercise to try to stay mobile. Like I gotta run around with some little ones, and I have to be able to do it. And especially when this COVID lifts and I can go to the park again, I gotta be able to run after them little boogers. So you know, it's it's so I think there should be an expectation that, hey, we gotta stay healthy, and we gotta stay, we gotta stay in a good place. And beyond that, even a responsibility to my children, because I would prefer not to be one of those old people that they gotta constantly look after and take care of. I would prefer they don't have to change my diapers when I'm 70, 80 years old. I would prefer it, you know.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's out of your control. You could do all the healthy stuff in the world, but I mean, your body's going to fail eventually in some kind of way. So, so even beyond that, I guess we can get into the other stuff. I say also monetarily, but so that maybe I can afford to have live in help and things like that.
When I first got married, it was something I never really considered. I've been a diabetic since 2006, 2005. The only time I had ever really was concerned about things in 2005, obviously I was way younger. So, at that point in time, I felt I was, indestructible. I was a young guy. I did, I was very heavy set at that point in time. I think I was topping the scale somewhere around maybe about 435. I was a big dude. And Hudson can attest to it. When I ended up in the hospital when we were living out there in Vegas, my life changed at that point. I don't think I really took it as seriously as I thought I should have, but I put in some effort to try and get my weight and everything under control. When I came back here, when I met my wife at the time, she was just sending in, and the time we spent before we got married, I think I may ended up in the hospital maybe once. So I met her in 2006. We got together around 2008. I moved back here, and maybe about 5 years in before I actually proposed, it might have been one time when my health had really got to a point where it was kind of faulty, or I ended up in the hospital and I just wasn't, doing well. By that point in time, Jada was here too. So it wasn't something that really hit me until you thought about it, where it's like, okay, well, I have a daughter. I have this woman who I plan on making my wife. Uh, you gotta do something here. Now, when I first started like going into it, I don't really think I thought about it health wise. At the same time, I don't think I made good decisions on that. It was more along the lines of, okay, if I'm gonna die, I got to make sure they straight before I go.
Mhm.
So, I started looking into my finances and insurance and stuff like that.
So looking at it now, you do
Yeah.
feel like you want to try to keep that
Well,
same
looking at
body?
it now, I mean, obviously, I want to say at least for the last 6 or 7 years, up until that bout that I had where I had my blood clot that shot up through from my leg up into my chest. That was the last time I had actually dealt with any kind of like health problems. Otherwise, I think I had been trying my best to get myself in a position where I'd at least be semi healthy. I'd like to make it to a certain age. There's an age I always kept in my head where it's like, all right, I'm cool if I get here. I don't know if I really want to go over that. But in saying that, I realized that I realized that it could become kind of a defeatist attitude, I guess. If you try to mark yourself at a number, like if I get here, I'm good.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, I'd like to be here for as long as I can. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to seeing my kids grow and me being here with my wife. And hopefully she has the right same kinds of thoughts that I have. Like if we're gonna be here, at least we could be here together and keep each other, keep our old butts company at least. Because I don't want to go through the trouble of having to find and get to know somebody else. I don't want them kind of problems. I really don't.
For me personally, it's almost been the exact opposite. I never saw myself as an old man. I always felt like I was probably going to die young because I've never been in a situation where I felt like my health was really, really good. Like I wouldn't go to, I've been to hospital very rarely. I don't have diabetes or anything like that, but I've just always been overweight. And for most of my life, I didn't feel like it was something I was going to be able to overcome. And I know that, the body can only take so much. And I just kind of accepted that as the way things were going to be, probably until Simone came around. It's only been really, really recently where, like you were saying before, I thought more about the future, and I'm like, I have a responsibility both to my child and to my wife to be healthy and be present, because my presence is needed. And before, I didn't really have that mindset, and so coming from that standpoint, I feel like a person does have a responsibility to at least be healthy, even if they can't maintain the same type of body that you had when you first got into a relationship. You can't let it get to the point where you're in and out of the hospital and a whole bunch of things are happening to you that are really under your control. If you would be more disciplined and how you conducted yourself on a day-to-day basis, these things would not be happening to you. I do believe you have a responsibility to not put your partner through that. So,
What about so? I mean, for us, it's a health issue, but there's a lot of people out there where it's actually a lips issue for them. So I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think so? Like for me, I can't picture myself ever not being attracted to my wife. Like
mhm,
like it would never be something physical for me. It'd be something mental, right? That's the only reason that I could ever think that. So I could never think of anything physically. But there's some people out there for them it's like if their wife gains, like I've met people like this and talked to people like this, if their wife gains 20 pounds or something due to
mhm.
pregnancy or something like that, and they're just like turned off, and they're like done, and they can't unless their wife loses that weight like within a certain amount of time. They're getting, and it's like I just don't know. Is that even really love? Do they even really love that person? Is what I wonder.
Here's a crazy thing. When I met my wife, when we got together, we were we were both. If anybody look at it, they'll say, "Hey, they're overweight. Look at the big folks and stuff like that." I believe when I met Cynthia, I thought she was perfect. She was
Mhm.
beautiful. She had the prettiest smile in the world, and I was more attracted to her every day I saw her. So, when you have kids and stuff like that, there are those that baby weight and stuff that kind of gets there. When she had Jada, Jada, you'd have thought she had triplets. I kind of felt bad because I thought I did her wrong, but she had the baby. You know how women they sometimes they get that baby weight and stuff. After she had Junior, she started kind of getting real self conscious about her weight and how things were going with her, and she felt like that it affected me. I told her it's like every day. I look, it's crazy to me on how I look at my wife when I met her and up until the point where she had kids. It's like there was nothing different about her. There was nothing that
Mhm.
had changed. I didn't even notice any of the weight. And she'll say, and we'll look at pictures and stuff back there because at one point she had gastric bypass. Because I mean, I wanted her to do what she felt was necessary, so that she would feel like she was healthy and that she felt good about herself. Only thing that I cared about was the fact that as long as the surgery and stuff was safe and that she was able to get past it, and if I was able to help her get through it in any kind of way, I was down for it. I probably wouldn't have said that about 10, 15 years ago. I'm like, just go work out. But,
Hmm.
it is what it was. But when she started losing the weight after she had the gastric bypass, there was something there for me that kind of changed.
Hmm.
It was kind of weird to see her lose the weight that she did, and it kind of made me feel a certain kind of way. And I have to literally admit that. Like I had been so used to seeing her in this particular light, and when she made this drastic change, because when you get that gastric, like you lose weight like that.
Hmm.
When she had that, it actually kind of made me. It had me a little weird at first. I didn't really know how to deal with it because like her whole body had changed at one point. She was still the same person, but it just wasn't what I was used to. You know what I mean? So we didn't. It wasn't that I wasn't attracted or anything like that. It was just kind of weird to just kind of see her go from what I had grown to know and love to just like she basically became a totally different person at one point.
I just kind of wondered. But do you think, because in your case, you're talking about someone who was trying to do something that was they felt was going to better them, and it was a drastic change
Mhm.
through it, right? Do you think that those feelings may have came from you, perhaps feeling like that maybe you were insecure about something you hadn't done yet?
Yeah, all day. Cause shit, all day. Cause when she got small, I'm like, damn, I'm the fat motherfucker that's walking around with the beautiful skinny woman and shit. Of course I felt self conscious. All that shit was on me all day long. Like, oh wait, because it's pictures that we've taken after she had that surgery. I'm like, Jesus, I feel like I'm a crush her or something like that. It was just weird. It really was. But in that I think the best part about our relationship was like communication in that where it was, I tried to at least kind of convey how I felt about it. And then she let me know. It's like, it's not like I'm expecting you to go and get that surgery too, because I want you to be skinny and all this other stuff. I love you because of who you are and what you've been, just like the whole thing for her, it was about her mentality and how she felt about herself, and I wanted her to be happy regardless. But yeah, oh yeah, there was plenty of insecurity, and I'm like, damn, I need to go do some sit-ups or something. I had to stop eating. I can even like with that gastric, like she can't eat like we normally would. So like we would go to restaurants and she'd have a couple bites or something and she'd be done. And here I am tearing into a steak, a lobster tail, a potato, sitting at this table looking like a monster trying to eat all this food while she's sitting here like this dabbing and taking little sips of water. Yeah, I was self conscious as hell.
I'll have a lemon slice and a glass of water, please.
Hey. Yeah, I separate love and sexual attraction, especially for a man. I feel like you can absolutely love someone that you're not sexually attracted to. And guys have sexual contact with women they do not love all the time. So I don't necessarily equate the two. And I've actually seen a relationship that seemed fine at first. It seemed like they were enjoying each other's company, and then the woman had to get her breast size reduced, and it had a significant impact on their relationship, which I kind of feel like puts the whole thing in question, right? Like, if you truly, truly love the person, and especially if they're getting their breast size reduced because of health, because it is at this point negatively impacted their body. I don't understand how you can love a person and not find a way to try to get past that and still keep the relationship going.
You go to a doctor and you find some healthy ones to put back in there. Don't change that on nobody like that. What's wrong with you?
Hey, some weightless silicone.
I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? Maybe she went a couple years beforehand when doctors was using stuff they had no business using. Go on back, get you some replacements, get you some healthy green ones, get them on in there. We
Wow.
happy, we good. What's the problem?
So to follow that up, um, do you have a responsibility to be the same person Meaning, if you get with a particular individual for a long term serious relationship, and when you meet them, you have a specific political affiliation, you have a religion, you have some pillars that kind of define who you are. Do you have a responsibility to stick with that because that is the person that this other individual fell in love with? Like, I'll be honest, if Samantha all of a sudden made a turn and she started, supporting Trump and wearing MAGA hats and talking about Black Lives Matter people are terrorists, I don't know if this marriage could survive that. Just being completely honest,
I
you
don't
know?
know if we could be friends again. Why would you marry this girl? What are you doing?
Right,
Why you
right.
should know about this?
Or is that unfair on my part? Because technically, nobody is going to stay the same, especially if you're going to be with them for a long period of time. So when you get into these marriages, these situations, should you expect that, hey, you're not going to be the same person 15 years from now that you are right now, and I should just be ready to adapt and flow with the changes that you go through?
I think that'd be a major change, though. Something like that, I kind of feel like, okay, so to start off one spectrum and to be completely a different spectrum, like I think that takes something drastic, and I think that's something that happens to somebody personally that has to be worked out some way. There has to be some form of communication. That's something that just can't blindside you. You can't just wake up one day and she come walking in the room with a MAGA hat on, ready to go and storm the Capitol. It's like, wait, what? That's one of the things. Like, I don't think there's something in that where you have to be like, okay, well, I just got to follow my wife because now she's ready to go tear up some shit and let's jump down on it. There has to be some kind of gradual change or an understanding of where you're going mentally or with a religion that you're talking about. Like, there's some of that stuff. Like, if you with somebody who's just full blown off in the, oh, I'm gonna be a Buddhist. I think you should have known this person was like that before you married them. To be perfectly honest with you.
I mean, but sometimes people do get blindsided, right? That's a, what do they call it? A midlife crisis. People decide, you know what? I want to change my life. I want to do something different. And they just make a switch and they don't necessarily ask you about that switch. They just decide, hey, this is what's best for me. So you're not always prepared for the changes that you see.
Going and getting a motorcycle as a guy, like being a midlife crisis type thing,
Hmm.
okay. Going out and playing like football, like full equipment and everything at the age of 45.
Hmm.
I just need to change. I need to feel young again. Yeah, okay. Decisions like that kind of fix themselves at the end of the day. And if it's a change that somebody's doing that they're trying to just kind of make themselves feel better. Cause yeah, I mean, when you get them older, when you hit them ages, obviously it's just like, okay, I gotta do something to make myself feel alive again. I mean, there's certain things that you can compromise in that. There's communication involved. And like I say, like some of that stuff just don't happen like in an instant.
There may be a very, very tiny portion of the population that would do this, but in general, I don't think you're going to have that group of people that just wake up and go, "I'm 45 now. I've always wanted to be racist. Now's my time." I don't think I don't thing that happen, right?
Hmm.
But I think Jason's right. The signs are there, and they gradually come on. But I think when you're in it, it's harder to see it. Like Trump is a perfect example, right? You know, McConnell and Pence, I guarantee you, thought that they could have Trump under control. They thought that there was only so far Trump would go, and I think when you're in it, you think, okay, they're not going to get that crazy. There's only so far they're going to go. It's only so far they're going to take it until it's out of control. So it's either you think you got it or it's just completely off the rails. And I think it's hard for people to see that. You really do have to try to set some type of expectations, and You got to be honest with your partners in the beginning of, hey, I, I, I married you. You're Christian, and that's part of the reason that I'm with you. And if you decide you don't want to be Christian, that's going to make me question the relationship. Now, maybe you can't say for sure that you would break up with this person, but you need to be honest that that's a big reason that you're with that person. Now there's some religions and some people who automatically know because they're a part of the religion that, hey, it's kind of because of this religion we're locked in. So if you're not a part of that religion, we got a problem. Some religions, that, right? So having those expectations at the beginning is so important, but it's a lot of stuff, just like with the physical stuff. We don't talk about it at all in the beginning. We're it's just love, so it's go straight forward, and we don't think about any of that.
What changes are deal breakers for you?
It's so hard to say. I would gotta say, if my woman was to storm the Capitol, I would definitely have to question. Uh, I would have to question what's going on here. I would have to say at the point that she's doing something that starts to risk the family. That starts to
Mhm.
risk her and risk the family, and at the point that she's not willing to even discuss it. you know I would say, now that's where I have to say, there's a lot of questions we need to ask, and we need to, if you don't even, you want to do all this stuff, it's endangering us. You don't even want to run it past me. If you're
Mhm.
gonna, if you're gonna endanger the family, you should kind of talk it over with the family first, right? So,
Right.
it's that sort of thing that I think would make me go, okay, there are some lines crossed, and we need to discuss this. Other than that, I can't really think of anything. I can't think of. It's not too much that would make me go, I can't be with this woman.
I don't think it was anything that I can say that would be a deal breaker in it, other than just us living our lives and trying to figure out what direction we want to go in. Are you listening to what it is, what I want to do? Do you hear and feel on how I want to be? Am I being that person that you want me to be, or that you can at least deal with? I got this. I got this baggage on me, and I'm carrying it every day. But this is who I am too. I'm pretty cool to hang out with. You love me, I love you, and we talking about building the future. We having these babies, then let's go.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Like, there's very little that I would consider a deal breaker for the relationship I've cultivated with my wife. The only thing I can think of is the discussion that we had before we even got married. I've since I was young, I've seen myself as a father, and I wanted to be a father. And Samantha, she had to take care of her nephew when he was very, very young. So she already had that experience of, waking up every day, being responsible for someone, taking him to school, taking care of all his meals, et cetera, et cetera. And so she had very little interest in having to do that whole rodeo again. We met each other in 2001. We didn't actually get married until I think 2014. And her not wanting to have children was a big reason for that. I was like, if you don't want to have children, I don't want to be married. You're not the one. And when she finally relented, that's pretty much when we got together. And so I always told her, like, look, I want children. I want a lot of children. I wanted six. She's agreed to three. So I want my three. And I always told her, if for whatever reason there's an issue and we have to break up, my kids come with me. And you can go off and do whatever you want to do. My kids stay with me. That's the only thing that I could think of that would be like a major deal breaker. And she was like, you know what? I can't stand being a mother anymore, and I don't want to have, any more kids. But actually, now that we're in the situation where we have Simone, Samantha loves it. Samantha absolutely loves being a mother. She adores Simone, and it really hasn't been an issue at all. So I'm really, really thankful about it. The very last question is, how do you personally adapt to changes in your spouse? And I think, Jason, you've already answered this question to some degree with your previous commentary. I haven't had to deal with a serious, real change from Samantha to figure out how to adapt it yet. But Hudson, I figured I'd start with you. How do you adapt to changes in your spouse?
Um, I mean, I can't say that I've seen any real changes, so to speak. You know, at least definitely on any spectrum that will warrant a reaction as far as something negative or anything like that. You know, I think but I think overall you got to be supportive. Change has to come. It has to come. I mean, one of the things I didn't mention about the book I'm reading, it's you change or you die. I mean, you might as well be dead here on this earth if you do not change. You know, so I wholeheartedly believe that. And it's up to us if we decide that that change is going to be a good change or if it's going to be a negative change. So I mean, for any change, I have to try to be supportive, and I have to try to keep the lines of communication open. Where if the change is, in my opinion, getting, I guess, for lack of better words, too negative, you know, I have to be supportive, and I have to have the guts. I think a lot of people in general don't have this. I have to have the guts to say that this is not changing for the good, whatever it is. And that's where the strong bonds come from. That's where the strong relationship comes from when you have those open and honest discussions and dialogues. And I think that's also a part of support. It's not just support to be a yes man and say, yes dear to everything, even though I say that most times just to make sure, let's just take out the trash, yes dear. Let's just do clean that. Oh yes, dear. Even if I'm not going to do it, I still say yes, dear. Right? I mean, that's what I'm supposed to do. Right? So anyway,
Right.
I hope you don't hear that part. Anyway, that's the overall thing is that you have to be supportive to your spouse. Whatever you do, and we all have children. So and we all have to be mindful that whatever we do is being watched. It's being watched under a microscope, and I have to make sure that my kids know that I got my wife's back 1,000% on anything. So especially when they start getting to the age where they try to pit us against one another so they can get a cookie. I got to make sure she knows. If your mama said you can't have a cookie, what makes you think I'm gonna let you have a cookie? You can't have no cookie. Get out of here. And I have to do support. I have to support. So that's how I
Right.
feel about it. And I think that's the best way to adapt to any change is that you just have to be open. You have to be open and honest
Hmm.
and communicate about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, brothers. Appreciate all of you providing your perspective. I think that was definitely an interesting topic for us to broach. Now, as always on our podcast, we have come to the final section, and that is for the last time for quite some time, we'll talk about the Bears. And of course, they recently had a press conference where everyone from the owner to the head coach tried to convince us that everything is really okay and that we're on the right track and that we're just one step away from the Super Bowl, apparently, and that all that needed to happen, the only person who needed to pay a cost for this was our defensive coordinator, apparently. Who might have already intended to retire, quite frankly. So he might not have even been forced out. He might have already just planned to go and decided, yeah, sure, I'll step away and y'all can pretend that you made me a fall guy for this nonsense. But personally, I believe if he didn't intend to retire, they would have just kept everybody and
Mhm.
stepped out on that podium and tried to convince us that this is the squad that's really going to be able to put together a team that'll take us all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't buy it, and I don't have much more to say because I'm still pretty disgusted. But Hudson, you wanted to speak on it?
Oh yeah, I listened to that press conference, the entire thing. I
The
listened
entire thing?
to the entire
You're a
thing.
better man than me.
Know what was going on and what they could possibly be thinking. Because the reason I listened to it is because I saw the previous day that pretty much the reports were they were going to keep Coach Nagy and General Manager Ryan Pace. They were going to keep them both, and I wanted to know why. I wanted to hear some kind of reason as to why this is what they were going to do.
Did
And
you get that? No.
I, no. Here, here's the thing. And now I definitely see, if I didn't know before, I definitely see why reporters ask the same questions over and over again. And and the reporters asked, there were like three questions that the reporters kept asking because they kept not answering. There was absolutely no answer to these questions. And one of the biggest questions is, why do you have so much faith in Pace and Nagy to do this again? And they kept they and the reporters were just looking for something tangible, something they could hold on to. Like they would have took anything, any reason. But all they kept hearing was they got this great culture and this collaboration that they're going to do now that is just going to lead them into some type of promised land, and nothing tangible came out of the whole thing. There was no absolute real reason they could give. And what's even scarier is when reporters asked, are there any standards that you set? Are there any benchmarks that you set? There was none. There was none. Now let me say, I did not expect them to actually say what the benchmarks were, because you always want to be able to walk it back at the end of the season. You don't want to say I'm
Of
gonna
course.
fire them if they don't go 12-4, right? Because then what if they go 11-5? Are you gonna fire them if they go 11-5? Probably not. So you want to be able to
Yep,
walk it back,
that's what they did to love
you know, and that's but to basically say, but they could have said, hey, there are some benchmarks set, and we'll see how they pan out. They basically said, it's kind of you gotta kind of take it how you feel at the end of the season. They did this wishy-washy thing that lets you know that there's absolutely no standards set in place here. So look, here's my take on it, right? Here's the only thing that I think Ryan Pace does well, right? And initially you guys might disagree with me, but here's what I'm gonna say he does well. He drafts well. He drafts well. If you take Trubisky out of the equation, he actually drafts pretty good. Okay, I mean, if you look at the defensive side of the ball, he drafted. I made a list: Eddie Goldman, Adrian Amos, and even though Leonard Floyd didn't work out like we wanted, I still think it was a good pickup. It just wasn't a good, it just didn't really work out, but I still think it was a good pickup. Nick Kutwowski, however you pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
Deion Bush played some very meaningful minutes for us. Eddie Jackson, Roquan Smith, Bilal Nichols has stepped up. I think Duke Shelley is going to be a nice contributor over time. Jalen Johnson, Vildor, he put up some meaningful time with the injuries that happened. Then you got Cody Whitehair, Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, James Daniels, David Montgomery, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, right? I mean, he drafts well, but what he does is give away a ton of our draft picks. So you draft good, but then you give them away, right? And you have seemingly no idea how to pick a quarterback. You can pick everybody else, but you cannot pick a quarterback at all. You know, uh, the quarterbacks he's picked. Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, Mike Glennon, Chase Daniels, and one in draft and three in free agency. But you see that this is just he's picked all quarterbacks who had no track record of success. Nothing you could point at and say
Hmm.
this is a quarterback for the future. This is a quarterback that I have confidence in, right? So
None.
here's what I think after I heard this whole debacle, right? And let me say, in the way it sounded, and it sounded bad. A lot of Bears fans are mad, but in the way it sounded, I wouldn't be surprised if mid-season next year, if you'll see something unprecedented that the Bears never do. Right? I wouldn't be surprised if they do it. Is that mid-season If it looks like that Nagy and Pace ain't got their crap together, that they're going to be fired midseason. I would not be surprised if that happens, right? Even though that's something they
Mm-hmm.
never do, I wouldn't be surprised if they do it. But here's what I think: if they're going to keep Pace and Nagy, here's what I think they got to do. Right? Here's what I think they got to do. First off, they got 7 draft picks this year. They better keep them. Okay, they better keep them. Right? Because from the list that I pointed out, each of those years that he's drafted, he's found players that could come in and make immediate impact. So except quarterback, he's been able to find some meaningful picks in the draft. All right. Number two, I gotta say, man, no blockbuster trades this year. None. I know people are excited about the thought of Deshaun Watson. I know uh, Dak Prescott is there and all that, but I think we gotta you know I don't think we're willing to pay the heavy price that we had to pay for Prescott because rumor has it they're about to offer him 4 years at 158 million. I don't think we want to pay it. Now I don't think it's worth it honestly for us. I don't. For them, maybe. For us, no. And he's cut. And remember, he's in that mediocre deal too. He's coming from a place where it's all just like the Bears. The fans are just as fed up with them as we are with the Bears. So I don't think he's right for it. So if you take away Prescott and Deshaun Watson out of the equation, I really see no other quarterbacks in free agency that are significantly better than what we got. I honestly don't see it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's a waste of money to try to go after them, right? So, and I don't think a blockbuster trade to give away our future again for Deshaun Watson is worth it for us. So I think we got to stick with what we got. So the unpopular thing, in my opinion, stick with is keep Nick Foles and keep Trubisky. Keep them, right? And draft the
Mm.
quarterback in the draft. Number three, we got to stop placing so much emphasis on the quarterback position that we're forgetting all the rest of it. We got holes in a lot of different places. Some people think we don't, but we do, right? We don't have a next man up, right? As soon as Roquan Smith went down, we were done. Why? Because we decided to trade away a good draft pick that Pace made. We decided to trade him away and get rid of him, or let him go in free agency. I'm sorry, Nick Kwiatkowski, whatever his name is. We decided to let him go and keep Timothy Trevathan, right? And that has not worked for us. Didn't work for us at all, right? So we got to stop placing so much emphasis. Look, I know we see Aaron Rodgers in our division, and he's a great quarterback, but he's won one NFC conference championship and one Super Bowl in the same year. That's it. Okay. He has been self-served a division on a platter because none of the other teams in our division compete. That's why his success is so good. Yes, he is a great quarterback. He is. But he is benefited because we have a weak division. That's why he looks so good. It's not all about the quarterback, and we need to realize that. And we need to put the pieces in place around it to make it happen. This collaboration and good culture. What I think people get it confused, they get mediocrity confused with good culture. And mediocrity is a tricky bitch. It can disguise itself as great culture all the time. I've seen it in a lot of different places I go. People are happy with being mediocre because it means your expectations aren't up here. And people like you better when you don't have high expectations of them. Basically, you're okay to fail. And that's what I see. The Bears are okay to fail, and they have to switch that around. But overall, here's the reason why I think Pace and Nagy truly didn't go anywhere this season because so many teams need a GM and a head coach this year. And when I actually looked at it, there's a lot of teams out in the market looking for these guys right now. So I think they felt like it was a bad year for them to do the search because they were going to have to pay more money out to try to take a candidate away from other people who wanted them, right? So I think they decided with that, and especially because their big thing when they were asked, "Are you doing this because of the money? Because it would cost you more money, especially when COVID, when all the teams are losing money?" They said no. I believe that was the only question that they answered with any kind of conviction, and I think that was a lie. They did it because they didn't want to spend the money, and other teams were going to be competing for the GMs and for the head coaches that they would want.
Only if they're sticking to what the McCaskey has always done and say that only white people can be in charge of this organization, because there are plenty of qualified black candidates who still aren't even getting an interview. And there's no competition for the brothers. The competition is for all the young white folks, the same people that they keep recycling over and over again. Doug Peterson just got fired by the Eagles. Apparently, he's already up for head coaching job with another team. His year this past year was absolutely disgraceful. But they just recycle these guys back in and keep giving them a job. I feel like they should blow the whole thing up. I feel like they should trade Trubisky, trade Mack, get those draft picks. I agree with you that we draft well. We need to just start over, clean. I was looking at an article, I think it was yesterday, from the Chicago Sun-Times. They talked to an organizational person who was not associated with the Bears or Packers. And he said, if you look at every single position on the Bears team, the Packers are superior. He's like, the only position where you can even try to make a case that the Bears are better is inside linebacker. And he was like, and I still rate them lower because Danny Trevathan is absolutely horrible. But he's like, oh, there's no area, or whether you look at offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver, quarterback, defensive backs, it doesn't matter what area of the team you look at, the Packers are superior. So, what core do we really have that's allowing us to just put in a couple of pieces and then be able to compete the way that we need to? Because essentially, the Packers are who we're competing with. We could, it would be very difficult for us to get to the Super Bowl without being able to compete against the Packers. And so, if that's your ultimate goal, we're not set up for success. So in my mind, blow it up,
See,
trade these people off, give draft picks, and start with a fresh foundation and try to actually create something that'll put a quality product out there. Because the fact of the matter is, if we're 4 or 5 years away from being able to really seriously contend, these people that we're talking about won't be able to help us at that point anyway. Mac is not going to be nearly as good 4 years from now. We've already decided Trubisky is not that guy. Like, I don't see the point in trying to hang on to these people. It's a wrap.
I don't think it's that the Packers at every position are better. I think it's that I think what the and again, what I'm going to repeat, it comes down to coaching. Okay, so this past year we had 11 games decided by one score. We had 11 games this year decided by one score, and we were 6-5 in those games. Okay, by contrast, the Kansas City Chiefs were 8-1 in those games. The Buffalo Bills were 6-1 in those games. Seahawks 8-3 in those games. Right? So the good teams are excelling when it's one score or less. A team like us who are being mediocre middle of the pack, we're 6-5. What that tells me, and not just this year, we were 6-5 last year, and we were 6-5 in 2018 in games that were decided by one score. What that tells me is that the players aren't playing for that coach, and that coach is not. It's a matter of inches, and we've seen too many times where Nagy does some weird foo-foo play on a 3rd and 1 when you need to ram it down their throats. You've seen too many times where he didn't have Jimmy Graham in the game when they're inside the 10-yard line. This comes down to coaching and motivating your players. And so when they say they have good culture, this is not good culture.
I was honestly, I know people were expecting me to have some form of thought in this conversation. I personally am just thankful the season is over. I I don't remember too many seasons where like my emotions have been just been. I feel like girl that they got cheated on by 18 times, and I keep showing up on Sunday to cook Sunday dinner. Okay, make sure he eat good. Man, he fucking old girl right in the bedroom while I'm cooking. Jesus,
It's that bad, brother.
I think at some point in time, if we're going to have these same coaches, I can't say that they're going to have to renew what it is that he came in with back in 2018, because in the grand scheme, his offense don't work. It just doesn't. It was mediocre in 2018, except they had a few decent players, and you had a little bit more confidence in the Mitch Trubisky, who actually excelled in that terrible ass offense that they had. It wasn't even the best offense in 2018. They scored a few points. It wasn't that good then. Them same goofy ass plays that we keep seeing, we've been seeing that shit for 3 years now, and that ain't never gonna change. So the fact of the matter is his offense doesn't work. Now, if you can't convince him that you need to bring in a real offensive coordinator and bring in some new plays, that it's not going to be any different. I don't think I think he's way too prideful to deal with that because of the way he has treated and how he has not coached Mitch Trubisky. You can't tell me that this kid is the same dude he was 3 years ago when he came into the league. That's fucking mathematically impossible. Every quarterback that's come into the league has either gotten better or just doesn't play anymore.
Right.
And it's got to be one or the other. Either this kid has to get better. And that means coaching not only during the fucking season, that means in the fucking off season too. You got to put some kind of effort into this kid, put him with the right people, the right trainers, and everybody else that's going to put him in a position to succeed. Other than fucking around and coming out at the beginning of every damn season saying, "Oh well, Mitch, coming out on TV saying that he don't really understand the fucking offense." Maybe that's because of you. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the problem is the offense. If don't nobody understand it, which apparently don't nobody do, because it's either Allen Robinson having fucking 87 catches during the year with 1,000 some damn yards, because he the only motherfucker he know to throw it to. So at some point in time, you have to start reevaluating the fact that maybe your offense don't fucking work. And maybe it's time to fuck around and enlist somebody who knows how to run an offense, who knows how to coach a quarterback, who knows how to put a quarterback in a position to succeed. We've had plenty of motherfuckers that came in this league that then came from college and then fucked around and got better. And that's just how it's supposed to work if you're a good coach. But once you make a decision, once you come onto a team and say, well, I ain't pick him, I need the one I need in order to win, you shouldn't have a fucking job in the first place. Plain and fuck simple. Because you don't get to walk into an organization and say, I want this. Because guess what? When you got here, you had what you had. And you should have fucking worked with it instead of talking shit about it. Mm-hmm. The first thing you wanted to do was get Mitch ass out the fucking game. Shit, you wanted to get him out when he was playing Detroit at the beginning of the year. But you decided to wait to Atlanta until y'all got down a couple points, and this was your excuse to get Nick Foles in, and that's because you worked with Nick. It was lovely working with Nick them 6 weeks he was here in Kansas City and came in and got us in the playoffs like he did back in Philadelphia. That's great that Nick Foles was your fucking wonder quarterback for a couple of fucking games. That's great. That was great for Philadelphia. It worked out for them. That ain't how it worked in a real NFL season. Mm-hmm. Now we talked about the fact that the Bears played mediocre teams as opposed to good teams. I could give a fuck, man. The NFL is any given fucking Sunday. Motherfuckers can come out there on that field and beat the dog shit. You see what Cleveland just did to damn Pittsburgh. It wasn't no fucking way Cleveland was supposed to dog walk Pittsburgh in the fucking playoffs. These niggas scored 30-some points in the first quarter. That ain't how it's supposed to work. Cleveland, no. And I can give a fuck if it was a bullshit game. I could give a fuck what Pittsburgh did the last 5 games of the season. That's horseshit. On paper, Pittsburgh was better than Cleveland. On that Sunday, they chose otherwise. So I think there's a mashup when it comes to having coaches who bring a culture to a team and a team that's able to adapt to that culture. In 2018, the Bears were in that culture. And I think they had a set of circumstances where they had certain coaches that were quite enveloped into that culture. When Vic Fangio left, I thought that was one of the biggest fucking nut kicks in the world. When Denver hired him as a head coach, you took an identity away from that team.
Right.
The Bears didn't even look like they did in 2018 when 2019 season started. You didn't even feel it. When they played the Packers the first game of the season in 2018, even though they lost, I was still geeked up just because of the way they were, the way they played that game, the way they were out there just fucking playing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was excitement. I hadn't seen excitement on a Bears football team in years.
And
So it
they
got
took
me geeked up. And when 2019 came and they played the Packers the first game of the season in 2019, that dull ass game we watched, do you remember that game in
agree.
2019 when they played the Packers? It was
Yep.
13-3 or some shit like that. That was the most boring shit I ever seen in my life. It's like, what is this? How do you make this change from what it was then to what it is now? So I do believe that coaching does have a big difference in it. And if you're going to come in with a culture and tell motherfuckers, hey, we got Club Dub in this bitch, you got to keep that shit going from year to year.
Well, on that note, hey, I'll close it out with this: that I think the biggest disappointment and the most unfortunate thing about this season is the way that we have wasted Nick Foles' time here. And I feel completely 100% confident that we could, if we implement the culture that he's talking about, we are in a position to hopefully be able to succeed next year. I want to thank all of you for joining us here at SJH Mancave. We appreciate you spending time with us today. Remember that you can hear this and other episodes on all your major podcast platforms. We are on YouTube at SJH Mancave. Once you're there, please hit that subscribe button, like, and leave a comment. You can also share, like, and follow us on Facebook at SJH Podcast Family and SJH Mancave. I would like to thank my two fellow podcasters, Jason and Hudson, for keeping it real. Until next time, this is your host, Samori, signing off.
Peace.